Hello and welcome to the In the Money Media podcast, the In the Money Media YouTube channel as well. PTF and Nick Tammaro recapping weekend action. We also can't help it. We're going to have to look forward to this big Tuesday at Keeneland towards the end of the broadcast. Very happy to be here with you from the Brooklyn bunker. Once again, bringing in Nick from the planet Texas. Nick, how'd you make out this weekend? Some exciting racing, some strange weather, and some interesting results.
Pete, I've missed you. I've enjoyed doing these shows with Mikey P. I was going to look close and say, is that Pete? But it was a good weekend. It was a fun weekend. This is really one of my favorite weekends of the year. And of course, it was altered with the rescheduled dates at Keeneland. But all in all, I think we still got some good racing at Aqueduct and Santa Anita. And now we have a Tuesday to look forward to, as you alluded to, which we'll touch on. But yeah, kind of extending the weekend, if you will, and creating an elongated 8 days of racing at Keeneland. So it was nice to see Keeneland get started yesterday. And don't worry, every card that's been drawn, a morning line's been made for it already. Save next Sunday. So yeah, they go final early. So it was it's the whole catch-22, and nobody will find this interesting, so I'll keep it brief. But it's the whole catch-22 of, like, if you draw a week out, you sort of defeat the purpose of drawing a week out if you go final 72 hours out. Right. You draw a week out, you might as well go final as soon as possible. So they have me do every line that day, turn in the following morning, and then Sunday goes in on Wednesday. So the people who are playing the grade 1 gamble, those PPs are already final. Took me almost all day yesterday to make those two lines. I did Friday and Saturday, but nobody cares about my woes.
Your work ethic, you love it. I know it.
I love it.
Glad you mentioned grade 1 gamble. Big contest stuff happening at Keeneland. We encourage folks to check that out. You can still get involved. You can play online. I know this year you can play through our friends at Twin Spires, as well as some other outlets as well. But if you go to Keeneland.com and navigate over to the handicapping section, you'll be able to find that. Jim Goodman will be able to help you if you're looking to play in those contests this weekend. And if you have any trouble getting in touch, just reach out to me directly. Be happy to put you in touch with our friends there. It's one of the great early season contest experiences, the grade 1 gamble. You can reach me in themoneypodcast.com. Just hit that contact page. It goes right to my email. Let's start with the race. The race of the weekend, as far as I'm concerned, we go back to Santa Anita for the Santa Anita Derby. We talked about this race. It's the most time I've ever spent, Nick, talking about a 5-horse race, because it was a really, really interesting 5-horse race. I'm curious to get your take on it. Journalism, in the end, does the business. He gets the job done. His speed figure goes down from a 108 to a 102, but this was not a race he necessarily needed to win. He had the points to be in. He turned back, who looks like a progressive, talented rival in Baza. We'll talk about the ones who didn't show up. But give me your overview of what we saw out at the Great Race Place in the Santa Anita Derby.
I mean, it seems abundantly clear at this point, journalism's a deserving, pretty strong favorite. I think we could be talking about the sub 4-1 range. I think now, depending on this final prep coming up in the Bluegrass, but he totally validated the good performance in the San Felipe, overcame a little bit of trouble that probably gets exaggerated because of the importance of the race and the fact that it was so noticeable. But, the thing about him and trouble is that with that running style, you're going to run into it more often than not. So it was good to see him a little handier early. He was close to the pace, never far off of it, seems to travel really well, and finishes like a vintage Todd Pletcher type horse, right? Anybody in the White Bridal Parade that Michael McCarthy obviously is a proud member of finishes with a lot of alacrity, and that's exactly what happened here. So when he angled out turning for home, I thought for a second, if he just chugs along and runs second to Baeza, it's a good effort, and he puts his head down and starts charging. He's a tough customer. So they ran what looked like a fast race. They were pretty much 8+ lengths ahead of everybody else, and it came back a fast race. The 102 is a damn good number nowadays. The fact that he had gotten a 108 in the start prior maybe dampens it a little bit, but not to any significant point whatsoever. So I think he's very clearly the morning line favorite. I think you could probably see save like a big effort from River Thames or East Avenue 3-1 on journalism.
That's my guess. And it, when I think, there's two different ways of thinking about it, and it's going to depend, of course, on what happens in the Bluegrass. But I mean, he could be a double fig coming in, meaning his last 2 races faster than anything anyone else has ever run. And in a normal race, that makes you odds on. But it ain't no normal race, this Kentucky Derby. I mean, American Pharaoh, with his credentials, was 3-1 in the race, right? In the end, he drifted from 5-2 to 3-1 late, if I'm remembering that right.
Not realize that. Yeah, you're probably right, but yeah, I did not realize that.
Yeah, it's kind of nuts. So we'll see what happens, but I think 3-1's a good guess. As far as places in the world where you can actually bet right now, as short as 11-4, so that's a shade under 3-1. So notably, the Sharp book has him at 4-1, probably building in the fact that these odds people are betting now do not contain a no runner, no bet provision. So you never really know until they get into the gate, right? We've seen plenty of Derby favorites scratch the morning of, even in recent years. Not that I'm wishing that on journalism or anybody for that matter. You already answered. The next question I was going to ask was how much, if at all, do you worry about the 108 going to a 102? I think, in fact, Nick, I could argue it as a positive, right? I mean, you if he was coming in there off 2 massive top figures, I'm not a big bounce guy or anything like that, but it just feels like numerically it would either be, okay, he's just a freak, way, way better than these, he's going to roll, but there'd be something stuck in the back of my head if it was a paired up top that was thinking the number almost had to go, the arrow almost had to be pointed down. Now I feel like it's pointed straight up again, and he's just in beautiful shape as far as like figure patterns and such heading into the Derby. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, he was probably 95% to run a slower race on Beyer speed figures than he did the time before because he ran an exceptional number in getting that 108. So I don't think it's much of a concern. I think the fact that he showed a lot more, a good amount of tactical speed helps quite a bit. I mean, I think the worry with journalism is that he has a rider without a great deal of Kentucky Derby experience. Again, that's not been a big problem historically. A number of jockeys have won in their first go-round. It will not be Umberto Rispoli's first go-round. But what happens when he is in a much bigger field and a much faster paced race? Because both of those are likely to happen. One of them is a certainty. The field will be significantly bigger. There'll probably be roughly 3 to 4 times the number of horses he's accustomed to facing. And the pace is going to be a lot faster. So, if he were to draw the 3 and it's a fast-paced race, which it looks like it pretty much has to be, now you increase the likelihood that he's a lot farther back. He's taking a lot more dirt. He has to negotiate a trip around a lot more horses in a race where if you run into the kind of trouble that he did, it's not forgiving. So, that's why horses with his style in general have not ever been bet down as much. But at the same time, they haven't really come in with his level of credentials. So what we know is that he's a super talented horse in the hands of a really, really good trainer with a progressive type profile. All signs point to him being a deserving favorite. And I'm looking forward to seeing how he takes a step forward. You're right. American Pharaoh was a dime shy of 3-1. He went off 5-2, but 2.9-1, which is a great testament to how the race is bet, right? And if it's a competitive race, I think we saw last weekend it is a more competitive race than we thought, with the Wood winner, who we'll talk about soon, actually being a real win candidate.
Yeah, that's an interesting race to get to, and we'll do it momentarily, but we can't move on from this without talking about Baza and without talking about the 2 who didn't particularly show up. Let's go to Baza right away. A 101 this horse earns. We noted the unusualness of John Sheriff, sort of famously conservative, putting a horse into a grade 1 off just a maiden win. I'd say that confidence was justified. It was really interesting for a horse that attracted plenty of wise guy type attention. We spent a giant chunk of the Randy Jerry video talking about Baza and his credentials. The market dismissed him 14-1 in the end, pari-mutually, and he landed a very nice exacta, 12-1 exacta in second in this short field. Baza now, for the moment, is in the race. He's number 20 on the points list, but of course, this is before the Bluegrass gets run, when presumably some others will be ahead of him on the list. I have a good feeling about him getting into the race, just because it seems like we always see defections between now and entry day. But what did you think of Baza generally, and what do you think the chances are we'll see him back in the Kentucky Derby?
So the problem is he only got half the points that he would usually get for running second, right? So he only got 25 points.
Exactly. So he's not guaranteed.
Yeah, it's going to be tough.
Yeah.
So, he's going to need Well, I guess so. Where does he stand? I suppose while I rant now, you can look up the standings if you don't mind. Not that I'm giving you direction at this point, but
You can produce me.
it's hard not to like the race he ran, right? I mean, his lightly raced horse that put it all together to break his maiden impressively, came right back and ran a bang-up race. He always traveled well. It was kind of funny. I mean, I guess Sheriffs was hoping he could get the field bigger by entering Westwood, and you kind of looked at the race and realized that Westwood was in there as some form of rabbit, and Baeza kind of ran into him, right? He kind of moved early and got after him down the backstretch and still went on with it very nicely. You know, this feels like a horse that's moving forward and was clearly second best on the day. Looks like a real contender. So I hope that there are the proper number of defections to get him in, because there might be some horses who qualify that are less deserving, especially now that we see the UAE Derby winner. I'm not saying the UAE Derby winner is less deserving, but we see the UAE Derby winner is likely to be supplemented and to end up running. So that's going to hurt Baeza. Where is he on the standings?
So right now, Baeza is in 20th with 37.5. But notably, Chancellor McPatrick, 21 with 35, who's about to be competing, as is River Thames is in behind with 25 points. So could easily end up on the outside looking in. You know what? I'm going to go the official site. It does the best job of looking like tracking defections and such. So let me make sure that he's in the same point, there. But yeah, I mean, to me, yeah, it's what do you think? 60%, 75% that he'd make the race from there, but
Yeah, it's Owen Almighty is probably ahead of him. He feels like a horse who might not run. So they need Owen Almighty to win the Bluegrass. But then the problem is he wins the Bluegrass, he's going to run in the Derby.
Right.
So, that's the worry. East Avenue is not ahead of him, right? Burnham Square can't possibly be ahead of him. They're both just one prep horses at this point. So basically he's getting passed by two horses running in the Bluegrass. If that puts him at 22, he's very likely to get in.
Yeah.
So 22, 3 weeks out, will get you in. There's going to be at least 2 to 3 defections. At the very least, it would get him on the AE list. So I'd probably make him 80% to get in at this point. So, and that is, of course, me not looking at the list of who is ahead of him. But I would think that he's got a pretty good shot. And you know what, Pete? We should all be rooting for that, because he's a horse that you want in this race based on that race that he ran on Saturday. A horse that clearly is moving in the right direction.
I just sent you that points list if you want to take a look at that. You're a good multitasker while we're going through things. Let's talk about the two Baffert horses who, by any definition, disappointed. I haven't seen if there's been any reaction in terms of, it wasn't their day, still on the trail for a runner like Citizen Bull, who would have obviously plenty of points at this point. He's 10th on the list right now. Curious to know what you thought, if you saw any excuses for those Bafferts, or if I can, take a victory lap on my non-trust of Citizen Bull heading in.
I don't see why anybody in their right mind would want to bet Citizen Bull. He is fraudulent. I just have to be blunt. I mean, he's won 2 of the fakest races we've had in this crop, right? I mean, I hate to say it, but I feel so. What I thought going in, we didn't really talk much about the race before, but what I thought going in was that they would rate Citizen Bull in the hopes that he would rate effectively.
Right.
And then when he didn't, you would say, okay, well, we know he's just simply a need the lead type, and we're going to hope that there's one of these days where the sun shines and we get the lead. Not too dissimilar from what Dornick's Connections did with him in the Bluegrass last year.
Right.
And he underperformed again with a little trouble in the Derby, and then came back and won the Belmont when he was in a more favorable pace scenario. Citizen Bull hasn't really gotten much better this year, and this wasn't bad, Pete. This was kind of a woeful performance. I mean, he got drilled by 2 horses that look like they're just simply better than him. They're also 2 horses that look like their best days are ahead of them. And I think Citizen Bull might be a pretty quality horse up to about a mile, maybe a little bit more than a mile in a controlled scenario where he's on the lead. So I was not surprised by his lackluster performance. I was surprised by the lackluster performance of Barnes, but when you look at the way Barnes was bet, the way he had been training, Barnes feels like he's headed for the exits. And what I mean by that is he looks like a horse who either needs some time off or he needs a cutback. and maybe they got after Barnes a little bit too much. I hate to say that, though, with him only having had 3 starts prior to Saturday, only one of which was around 2 turns. But it feels like Barnes was exposed in his last start, and this was not good. It was odd in that he really was never engaged early. So, I understand the connections are going to go to the Derby with Citizen Bull. They're going to run all 3 of their horses that qualified, which I'll just leave that alone.
Throwing stuff against the wall to see if it sticks. Is that a nice way to say it?
I mean, I get it. Right, exactly. You put together these partnerships of these uber well-heeled people that want to go to the Derby. They're going to want to run in it with whatever they have. But, why would you run Madison Road in the Derby? There are meaningful races out there that this horse could win that would make him a stallion. Other than vanity, why would you run him in the Derby? He has no business being in there, right?
And it can be rough. It can be a bad experience for a horse,
Yeah, and I mean,
but it can just be deleterious to their development to put them in a cauldron
sure,
like that. Exactly. They're heading,
Right, and I mean, I see they're running 3. I would assume, he's in 17th on the list, so he's going to be one of them. I mean, I get the argument. Obviously, Rodriguez belongs in the race. Rodriguez is like the 4th choice right now, probably somewhere in that range. And I can even understand Citizen Bull was the 2-year-old champion. He qualified. You could say, you know what? We tried to raid. He wasn't effective. I get it. But why are you running Madison Road? It makes no sense whatsoever. Anyway, so yeah, they're trying to build stallions. I get it. They have this whole program, whatever. I've treated to all of the augury that is associated with that group on Twitter. So with that said, Barnes, on the other hand, I hope that Barnes is still right because I think he'd be a crack sprinter.
Yeah.
And I think him and Cornucopian both have the chances of being – I've heard that Baffert felt like he has a lot of milers, and I think him and Cornucopian could both be outstanding sprinters. So I hope that ends up being the case. He was ridden as if he had no chance, right? I mean, quite honestly.
Yeah. I can tell you a story about I can't tell you any story about Citizen Bull that's positive. I can tell you a little excuse story for Barnes. So Citizen Bull, to not be able to be best of speed, at least over the maiden, I mean, ugh. But Barnes, you could at least say, and this is the angle that we'll get to in a second when we pivot to Rodriguez, you could say he wasn't given his chance because they wanted Citizen Bull to be in front of him. I mean, he was keen early. He wasn't given his head. You could say, well, they took away his best chance with team tactics.
Fair.
But I don't really buy it,
See, that's why I thought you blast out with Barnes, right? And you say, look, this horse has one shot to get to the Derby, and that's with us trying to wire this field. I picked him for that reason. I knew he wasn't training that great, whatever. He had been beaten in the morning by Cornucopian, I think by Rodriguez as well. But I figured, hell with it. They're just going to blast. They're going to go, and they're going to say, we'll rate Citizen Bull to see if he can rate, but we'll go to the lead with Barnes because that's his best chance of winning. Instead, they just kind of rode him around there like it was a glorified workout, and he never had much to offer. So my guess is that Baffert had reached the conclusion before this race that Barnes really isn't a Derby horse, but he wanted to give him the opportunity to really do something unexpected.
Let's get to Rodriguez. So it felt to me like in his 2 previous races, he wasn't given the best chance to win, ceding tactical edge to barnmates. You had a feeling in the wood he was just going to go for it. I was hoping what was going to happen was it was going to set up for a crazy closer, and that's how my unsuccessful betting went in the race. Was trying to find long shots to get in there. But Rodriguez, I mean, he looked like a real horse. He ran a real number. 101 on the Beyer speed figure scale. He had that 100 back in the second race on January 4th. I mean, the more I look at this PP cut, this horse is going to take a lot of money in the Kentucky Derby, I think.
He is. Yeah, no, I mean, look, you win the wood, you always get a lot of support. And, this is the best looking wood winner in fill in the number of years in a while. I mean, look, I love the Wood Memorial. You and I are 2 guys that die on the hill of the Wood Memorial being, the most meaningful race to us by far. So it was nice to see a good winner again. It was nice to see a fast fig. And he's a horse that's going to, you're right, he's going to take money. I don't know if, what is his ceiling? A Bodemeister type race, right? He's just faster than everybody. Mikey gets the lead and says, the hell with it. We're just going to step on the gas the whole way and try it. And the floor is an 18th place finish after setting the pace. So, whatever you're going to, I feel like the best thing with Rodriguez about him is if you're betting him, he's either going to win or be absolutely nowhere.
Yeah, that's about right. Win or run out. We've seen it, seen the pattern many times before. I mean, the Bodemeister, that's a nice compliment. I mean, that was a winning race. That race wins. If it's the points era and there's no stretch out speed in there, that was a heck of a sprinter he was out there running with, as I recall.
It was a good one. Yeah.
He
won a meaningful race in the fall that year.
Yeah, the Breeders' Cup. I think that Rodriguez is definitely one that you have to have on your short list. I can't wait. We'll see what happens in terms of our Derby Monster Pods. We're going to start dropping them today on the YouTube channel. Make sure you're subscribed. On the audio side, we're not going to do them as they come. We're going to do them all as one big show. What about the rest of these horses in the wood? We agree Rodriguez is one you got to consider moving forward. Anybody else in here interesting to you, whether it's for a race like the Kentucky Derby or just as a horse that you think might have a valuable prize?
I mean, look, the racing world breathed a big sigh of relief that Mike Rapoli will be able to run in the Derby. So, and all kidding aside, I actually thought Grande ran pretty well. I did not really like this horse coming in. I didn't love the fact that he didn't really take a big step forward second time out. I like the Ian Wilkes colt that he beat on debut. So I noticed Grande early. I think we talked about him about 6 to 8 weeks ago after he won that maiden race. And I was really intrigued by what Todd would do with him next. It turns out Todd kind of went about this the right way. He kind of did they, I don't want to say they backdoored their way into it, but they took the path of least resistance, and he ran well. He feels like a horse that probably has a puncher's chance to get in the money in this thing. I think if you're betting supers, you definitely want him in the third and fourth slots of your supers. Feels like a horse that's probably only going to get better with distance, and he was really fighting on to the finish. The loser of the race was Captain Cook, who ran very poorly. And, I'm not a horse trainer, and obviously Rick Dutrow has won quite a few more meaningful races than I have, but I don't love this whole, I'm going to take a horse that's in sharp form that has 3 career starts and give him 60 days off before their next race. I just think these horses at this stage of their careers need to run more frequently. And this was a horse that clearly did not benefit from the time away, hadn't run since the Withers, and really underperformed. I believe now has an insufficient number of points to get in, which is probably a good thing. Probably needs a race like the Peter Pan and maybe a relocation to the Belmont or something. But I was hoping he'd run better, and he didn't. So it was a little disappointing in that regard. The rest of the field is they're just horses, nothing of note. I'm officially divorced from Omaha, and trying to get him into the money in any races moving forward. So twice and out.
You make a good point about Grande and the bloodlines, Curlin out of Journey Home by Warfront. This is one that should improve, and just very progressive pattern figure-wise, 83, 87, 97. The next number in that progression could easily be a low-rung finish, and this horse should be a very big price in there.
Well, and he's a point. I mean, his thoroughgraph sheet's going to look great.
Yeah.
He took the worst of it in terms of being wide the whole way. I don't think there was any appreciable track profile. There were winners that came from around the outside. There were a couple of races where it looked like being inside was advantageous. Andy usually updates the track trends page on NYRA.com. Hasn't yet, so I'm guessing he's probably still watching the replays and trying to give it the best view that he could. But I didn't think that it was really heavily tilted one direction. Did you?
No, it seemed fair. It seemed fair from what I saw on the watching live and the one time I went through on the tapes. But so there's nothing. But that sometimes there are subtle things. So it's smart to take a minute and try to evaluate that. But
the only thing I'll say is the faster races had a forwardly placed flow to them. So because if you think about 10 Strike Racing's Dear Chairman won the 4th, and he ran faster than Valenzen Day, who is a 10 claimer. But again, those 10 claimers are often pretty solid, 75, 80 buyer speed figure horses. He ran faster. He did it on the lead. Valenzen Day's race kind of blew up. So it not unheard of by any means that speed dominated races would be faster in the end. So that's kind of expected. But I didn't really notice anything that was significant, especially in the stakes races.
Yeah, the natural tilt. If people are, you're absolutely right. I mean, like dirt racing typically does, there's going to be an advantage to being forward. But when you're analyzing bias, you want to look for like horses that are doing so that weren't supposed to and things like that. And I didn't, none of that leapt out to me. One last thought on Captain Cook, just because it popped in my head. Another one maybe for the turn back, no?
Could be. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, definitely bred for a shorter trip. Maybe outran his pedigree winning the Withers and just did so because of the competition he was facing. So, yeah, it feels like a horse that I guess where he surfaces next will go a long way towards determining what Tatro thinks about him as well. If he wants to keep him long, you'll see him in the Peter Pan. But if he wants the cutback, there's a stake at Aqueduct. I think either Derby weekend or the weekend after it's 6 or 6.5. That might not be the worst spot.
I do want to spend a few minutes here looking ahead to this loaded Keeneland Tuesday card, but talking about historic New York races, I think we need a word on the Carter, especially because Crazy Mason ran a really nice race, I thought, and this was a horse that was very popular in the money media circles. So I feel like we should pause and talk about this. Crazy Mason, Quince Brew acquits himself well, facing New York horses for the first time. Do you think these two can be players in this division moving forward? The figure was.
I hope so, right? I mean, I want the Carter to be as meaningful a race as it can be. You know, as the Carter's always going to remind me of watching Artax and the Firm Success and horses like that with my dad years ago. And obviously it's suffered a pretty poor fate in recent years. And, you know, this running doesn't exactly get your blood flowing in terms of who was in it, but, you know, it was probably about what should have been in there. And Crazy Mason's a fun horse, right? Just seems impervious to pace dynamics or anything. He just makes his lopsided left lead run from way off of it. And then if he changes in time, he gets there. So it was a very well-timed ride. And what did the fig come back?
98.
98. Okay. I thought it was, high 90s. So
Decent.
All in all, solid race, right? It doesn't look like the sprint division. You know, it seems like every year the sprint division comes more into focus as the season goes on. I know that the Count Fleet is Saturday at Oaklawn, and Asmussen has a very quick horse named Booth who's in it, who has run 2 100-plus buyers recently. And Steve likes to run his horses frequently. So maybe you see Booth back in the Churchill Downs, and maybe we get Crazy Mason in there as well. Or, you know, it seems like a horse that now you want to get ambitious with him. He's in form and running well.
Yep. Let's talk about, unless you have anything else to button up on any of the recap stuff from the weekend, I think we go and talk about these stakes at Keeneland.
I don't think we saw any. I mean, obviously the Gazelle and the Santa Anita Oaks, you know, you and I talked about them a little bit off air. We didn't really see any movement in the market by the winning performances on any of those horses that would really be worth having a conversation about. I mean, to me, if anything, last weekend, and we'll see the Ashland today, but last weekend made it clearer that Good Cheer is going to be the favorite in the Oaks, in my opinion. And I would think that Quiet Side and 5G are going to be the second and third choices. So there's just nothing changed in that regard. Tenma was very underwhelming, and so was Ballerina Doro. So they look like horses that did not benefit from the additional ground, whereas some of those horses we saw the weekend prior did.
We used to cover the heck out of the Oaks. We would give it the Monster Pod treatment. We'd do all this stuff, and the numbers just didn't justify it. People just weren't as interested. But that said, we still will cover it just in a more surgical way. I think we're going to do a top 5 or top 7 video later in the week, so folks can check that out.
Well, you and I are old enough to remember when the Kentucky Oaks really didn't matter all that much, right? Like 25, 30 years ago, the Oaks was just the race that they ran the day before the Derby. I love that it's become popular, right? It's a huge day of racing. It's a really good day of racing, but you know, the significance of it is still tremendous. But again, I mean, there's no point in really spending a whole lot of time on it if you don't have horses that are. I mean, I guess you need Rachel Alexandra, right?
I gave up the fight a long time ago of the Derby's great, but there's a million other races we can talk about, and really pushing everything else. And, you know, we underplayed the Derby the first few years of In the Money Media or I should really say in a Players Podcast. By the time we got to In the Money Media, we realized we're content creators. Our job is to give people what they want. And any video that says Derby in it does 10 times the numbers of any other.
The Derby. Everybody wants to talk Derby. It's the truth.
And the fire hose of content coming on anytime now. Let's talk Keeneland Tuesday. Do we think they'll be back on the turf? We do, right?
Yes. I think they'll be back on the turf for, at the very least, the Shakertown and the Appalachian. So I would say those will be on. I have not seen what the status is today My understanding was the hope was that they would run the Transylvania on it today. But I mean, again, that was depending on just how much rain they got.
Right. Changes aren't in yet, so that'll certainly be a tip.
The Transylvania is on today. Every other race is off.
Okay, but that's a great sign. That's
in all likelihood, then tomorrow they'll be on, at least for the Appalachian and the Shakertown.
Give us a quick rattle through your thoughts in these stakes races, or and if you don't have an opinion, skip it. But curious to know what you're most interested in landing on throughout.
I'm a never-ending supply of opinions, you know that. No, look, we can kind of work backwards. I think the most important race to discuss is the Bluegrass.
Let's do it.
And I will say that from the perspective of making the morning line, so I got the field for the Bluegrass. I had to hand make my PPs because they weren't out, obviously, and the race wasn't drawn. And I looked at the names of the horses that were running, and I said to myself, well, I guess Chancer McPatrick's going to be favored. And then I put the PPs together and was like, there's no chance in hell I can make this horse the favorite. He can go off the favorite. It's not going to shock me, but his running lines are a little dull when you really take them at face value. The other thing is that I did not remember. I was giving it like one eye's worth of attention. He wasn't even favored in the Tampa Derby. Right. Patch Adams was favored, which I was shocked about. So I ended up making River Thames the favorite. I've already gotten feedback that was a mistake, so on and so forth. But the bottom line is this horse has 3 90+ buyer speed figures, including a one at 2-1 last out behind Sovereignty. So he's got fast races. He's got races where he's been bad. I don't love the rail draw, but to me, he's clearly the horse to beat. What's supposed to happen in this race is that he is supposed to go and make East Avenue work harder to get in front of him. There is no doubt in my mind that East Avenue is going to have the lead when they make the entry to the clubhouse turn, as Kurt Becker would say. There's no doubt in my mind. But the question is, how hard is he going to have to work to get in front of Owen Almighty and River Thames, which would lead me to believe from a betting perspective, the horse you're supposed to be betting is Burnham Square. You're supposed to give Burnham Square one more opportunity off the Fountain of Youth. That was why I didn't want to make him too big a price, because I feel like he's going to get a lot of attention being a Wilkes horse back in Kentucky, getting that set up, running in spots a little bit last time. So I think all signs point to him being very dangerous at a number.
Yeah, I mean, I like that idea for sure. I mean, Chancer, it's put up or shut up time for Chancer for sure, and he should get the setup. Do you have any reason to believe that East Avenue is still a horse?
It's funny, in the days of excuses galore, we never got an excuse on why he ran so poorly last time. Was it the lights? Was it not having the lead? Was it being outside? Did the winner just freak? The winner freaking doesn't matter. This horse stopped before the quarter pole. So I'm guessing that the blinker's going on. It has been told to me that his workouts have been very good.
Yes.
So I'm thinking that was probably it, that they're just throwing it out and trying to get it going again. I mean, I will tell you, I spent way too long, and Amy Owens at Keeneland can tell you, I emailed her and said, I'm going to send you the line later because I'm going to spend from now until then thinking about it. And it was like 6 hours. And I thought to myself, how are they going to bet this horse? Like, how are they going to bet? This horse is so hard to figure out, right? Because he has taken so much money in his career so far. I could see him at 5-2. I could see him at 4-1.
Yeah. I do not envy you making the line on this race. It's absolutely
very tough.
It's
very tough.
It'll be fascinating to see how it goes. Let's move backwards. I think, for me, it's Chancer and Burnham Square. Let's move backwards. How about the Shakertown? Coppola, since he had the breathing operation, has been really a much better horse. All in all, I'm a card-carrying member of his fan club. He looks to me like he should be the best early, but this isn't going to be easy with those numbers 1, 2, and 3 in there. Who do you think is going to win the Shakertown?
Agreed. It's a tough race. There was a horse that Dale won with yesterday that got pounded late and ran very well. Dale's had a great 2025 so far, which almost makes me feel like I wish I had made Coppola a little bit shorter price. The problem with Coppola is that, the wise guys are going to look at him and say, when he runs one of those Gulfstream races elsewhere, that's when we'll get on board.
Yes.
because it's really been a tale of two horses. He's been incredible at Gulfstream, and he's been very ordinary everywhere else. He's been beaten by a number of these horses. He's beaten a few of them as well, but he's going to have to run better. I guess when you start to pick apart his PPs, he didn't really run that badly in the Jaipur last year, and he ran okay at Keeneland in the fall as well, but was beaten by both Arshot and Arzak. So I made Arshot a slight favorite. I'd probably bet Arzak because I bet Arzak every time, and I think that Irad is the best fit for him. So he'll get a little bit more pace help, and he'll get a course that's probably a little more conducive to making up some ground as opposed to that really firm Gulfstream course that he got last time.
It'll be interesting to see how the turf course plays, because I feel like in recent years with moisture, which presumably there will still be some in, that rail can get a little icky around there.
And I believe the rail's at 20. So, because they're going to go down to 0 for the weekend's racing.
Okay, that's huge.
Put that on the overnight. So yeah, I think the rail's at 20, and then they'll run on fresh grass over the weekend for the Jenny Wiley, which will it should even things out. But no two wet turf courses play the same.
It's true. And
this is one where it feels like a horse like Arshot, to me, has been so good at Keeneland. You want to upgrade him at Keeneland every time you possibly can.
Yeah, that Jenny Wiley is a war. I just did my analysis of that for At the Races. That's going to be a super fun race.
You think the rail horse for Chad is the favorite in there, right? I mean,
probably grade 1 form, group 1 form.
Yeah, but all 3 Euros are taking real money in there.
Yeah, they all have chances, but the home team is no slouches either. We'll do that one later in the week. Let's get to the grade 1 Madison on Tuesday. Scylla making her return to the races. You installed as the 8-5 morning line favorite. Is that where the Tammaro dollars will be going?
Yeah, I mean, if I was betting, I'd probably look to go there. I'm not a huge Emery fan. I thought Emery looked very ordinary in the inside information last time out, and I don't really trust all of these Safi Joseph stakes horses to transfer their form. But Mystic Lake obviously is a major player on the outside. She's very good in both of her last 2 starts, and clearly has proven at this point she's just a sprinter and needs to go shorter. Scylla's a horse who could end up needing a race. It's not going to surprise anybody if that's the case, but boy, Pete, you sure can make a good case that she ran the best race last out in the filly and mare sprint. I mean, Mike Smith got really aggressive with her around the far turn. And I think at the quarter pole is when I said to myself, why didn't Mott bring Castellano to ride this horse? But and I love Mikey. But that said, we did spend a lot of the early part of the winter saying that the filly and mare sprint was a negative key race. Every horse in there came back and underperformed in subsequent starts. So there's a little concern there. I thought her running lines overall and her grade 1 form made her the horse to beat. I thought Justique ran up a live rail last out. I don't think it was as big a rail as people thought immediately after the weekend, but I'd be a little skeptical. I'd want her to prove it one more time. Not going to surprise me, though, if she does. I think the horse that I would be a little inclined to try and squeeze into the number somehow is My Main Squeeze, who made a big move last out in her final start at 3, now comes back off a layoff. This is an aggressive placement by Mike Maker off the bench, and I think it says a lot about how much he likes this filly. So I'd be trying to give her a little consideration to get in the number.
6, 8, and 4, it sounds like, for Nick there.
Yep.
I'm misquoting you. The Commonwealth, grade 3, 7 furlong sprint, big full field. Any fancies?
Some of these connections probably watched the Carter and were like, man, we should have gone to New York. But this is a really tough race. I made Montalcino one of the favorites. He looks like a horse that's very dangerous. Extra Añejo doesn't look like a horse who's without chance. What you're talking about is coming off a huge race against New York breds, obviously now comes off Lasix for Wesley Ward, which really hasn't been a problem for Wesley Ward at all. I don't really have much of a lean here, Pete, to be honest. I probably would be inclined to try and see if Nutella Fella can take a step forward. He won what looked like a good race last out, and Caramel Chip came back. He had to race a lot closer to the pace, which really isn't his style. This is a scenario where Saez can let him drop back and make one run. It's obvious this horse has ability, so why not try him when you're going to finally get some value?
No, I get that. What you're talking about for me, not just because I'm such a fan of the 80s TV sitcom Different Strokes. Appalachian up next, race in our reverse run through here. Race number 6 for these 3-year-old fillies. What do you like?
I mean, the Mark Cassie pair on the rail are obviously going to dominate the wagering attention. Liam in the Dust will come out as she ran yesterday in an allowance race, for a race I think that was taken off the turf. The question here to me is really whether those two can be beaten. I don't see it. I don't really have anybody in there that's as good as them, and they've looked really solid, each of them at Gulfstream and Tampa in their last 2 respective starts. So I'm not going to be shocked if it kind of ends up being a Mark Casse, DJ Ortiz battle down the stretch.
Any chance of a meltdown here to bring a runner like Fionn into it, maybe?
Maybe. I've noticed over the years that the public is dismissive of that fairgrounds form, and I don't know if the turf maybe as much as the dirt, but I'll be intrigued to see what kind of money she gets. She's been favored obviously in 3 straight, but Brad is going to Luan Machado with Pratt named otherwise, and Florent was not named on horses because this card was supposed to be on Saturday and he was riding Hit Show. Right. So Pratt ends up on Mott, which is a little interesting that I guess maybe Brad didn't even reach out about this horse and they wanted to give. He's used Luan Machado more. He just won the Jeff Ruby Stakes with him. So
maybe he felt a little loyalty there.
Right. Could be.
Yeah. The Mott, the Pratt Mott horse would be a surprise. I think it's safe to say.
Yeah.
Poorly drawn just off that maiden win, but not a bad looking horse. Did close into that slow pace last time, but I didn't make a contender. And yeah, maybe people will play that musical jockeys game, and we get a little better price on the 3. We'll see how it all shakes out. Any other thoughts from Keeneland on Tuesday? Any best bet types and races we didn't talk about?
No, it's a fun card. I'm going to devote my attention to it now and start to take a look. There's a couple of really good allowance races on the turf, so looking forward. Northern Invader is actually cross-entered in an allowance race on this card and the Maker's Mark, so we'll see where Cherie wants to go. Not many places can card a 3 other than and get a full field, but Keeneland can. So
special place for many reasons, not the least of which that. Nick, great having you. We're going to do more with you throughout the week. We've got Keeneland covered, lock, stock, and barrel. Make sure you check out inthemoneypodcast.com for free tips and analysis daily. Nick, we'll be talking soon.
Sounds great, my friend. Enjoyed it.